Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
Boom, boom. We are back with another amazing episode of Find Your Freedom. And if you are watching right now, you're going to probably be cracking up laughing because Gabe got the coolest intro in the world. But before we get into our good friend here, because this is going to be a really good podcast today episode, right? One, we have a free item for you. Is called the Freedom Kit. It's free, easily downloadable. All you have to do is go to www.findyourfreedom.com/freedom kit. Once again, www.findyourfreedom.com/freedom kit. Go out, easily downloadable. All right. So our next guest is a really cool dude, man. And one of the cool things we did was we took some badass pictures in one of his badass cars when we was out in San Diego. He probably don't even remember that, right? But man, first and foremost, right? He got a background of pop music, right? I'm sitting here checking out, which I had no clue. I'm sitting here checking out some of the songs, right? What were some of the songs here? I got them written down. Some Let's Ride, Damn Plans, right? I was rocking out to that one, and Don't Be Lying. I like that, man. He performed over 750 shows on multiple continents, man. He also runs a nonprofit. I think that's called Edge Music or something like that.
Edumusicication.
Edumusicication, right? Edumusicication, right? And man, he got the vacation homes, he got the badass rental cars. We're gonna get into all of that. So I'm just happy that you're here, man. What's up, dude? How you feeling?
Guys, thanks for having me, man. I love it. I love seeing you guys. It's been a little bit since we got to meet up last. Lenny and Omid, thanks for having me.
Fantastic, Gabe. Every time we get together, it's always a blast. We laugh, we joke. We took some pictures in your badass car outside, the eatery spot when we was there. Gabe is the only person I know who parks his car on the sidewalk, right? So how that tells you how cool he is already, right? But before we do that and we get into some fun things and some things that you're interested in, some things you're doing as well. Can you just give us just a little background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a musician. I've been in the music industry for a long time. I worked in corporate America before that at a telecom company, doing customer service and stuff like that, but my real passion was music. And I ended up leaving my corporate job in like 2011 and starting my own concert tour. It's kind of a DIY concert tour where I would literally take bands around the country in an old school bus. And we'd just sleep, on couches in the bus, or we eventually built bunk beds in the bus. And the bus ran on vegetable oil because we didn't have any money. So we'd literally be like gassing up gassing up at, behind a Chinese restaurant, like sucking out the used vegetable oil out the back of those black bins before we could get to the next town to play the next show. It was brutal.
Wow.
Super DIY. And then we grew that. We got a real tour bus with bunk beds and a kitchen inside and everything. And that thing kept breaking down all the time. But we toured all over the US. We started doing international shows. I was on on a reality show for music on VH1. I got to play with a bunch of rock stars like Sammy Hagar and Kiss and Guns N' Roses, and just a lot of really cool little celebrity things. Got to party at the Playboy Mansion, and
That's cool.
Before that closed down, And so when COVID hit, this is like the super short version, but when COVID hit, we had a tour launching in March at South by Southwest in Austin, March 2020. And so the day before we were supposed to leave, which was my birthday, March 11th, we got the notice that South by Southwest was closing because of the pandemic. That was like the first big, musical event thing that was shutting down. And we're like, oh man, what's going to happen? And then every single other venue and thing that we were playing, shut down. We couldn't do our international dates. So it was just kind of a real quick pivot of like, I was living in Phoenix at the time with my buddy at his house. And so we just were like, hey, how are we going to pay the mortgage? And I was like, hey, we got an extra office room. Let's turn that into a bedroom, throw it up on Airbnb. I'll try to manage it, see if we can, you know, make do until this situation goes away. And the longer it dragged on, the longer it kind of kept going on, I was like, dang, I don't know about this. I don't know what's going to happen. And the funniest thing happened, like, I did not expect this to happen, but like, I started loving doing Airbnbs and providing hospitality. And I started finding like my creative outlet that way as well. As before, it was just, I thought it was just about music. And now I was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to like get my visual design thing going on. I'm starting to kind of see some like interesting things here. And just took off from there, man.
Wow. Okay. So 2011, you go and you're like, you know what? I'm going to not do the corporate thing and I'm going to kind of pursue my dreams. And you often see musicians um, kind of go through the struggle of like the initial transition. And you kind of, the way you described it, just in my head, is like the typical musician story, like, barely making it by, traveling, trying to get, recognized. Walk me through that process, because I think that is 99% of the population would be afraid to do something like that. So like, what are some of the lessons learned as you kind of went through that process, and the obstacles you kind of that just you went through in general?
Oh man. I don't know if everyone's been a musician, if everyone's played a show. I know Jesse Vasquez and I were talking about it too. He's a musician as well, and I have a feeling we played at some of the same kind of festivals back in the day. We just didn't know it, like Warped Tour and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Places in Santa Ana and places in Anaheim and Los Angeles and all those Riverside, DIY punk clubs and just emo rock clubs, stuff like that. But it really is like it's such a grind, and you really have to love it. And I did love it, and you do have to love those crazy hours, those very little amounts of pay from each bar or each club. Maybe they'll give you pizza at the end of the night, maybe they won't.
Yeah.
um, and you know uh, let's see, there's so many lessons learned that actually like translated into Airbnb and hospitality and running your own business this way. I think for a lot of musicians didn't make it because they loved the music, but they didn't want to do the grind for 5 plus years, much less 10 plus years. I think all in all, with all my former bands, it's probably in the music industry for like 20 some years. And I was the guy who never quit when all the other band members would be like, oh, I want to start a family, or man, this isn't working, or, interpersonal relations just break up the band, right? Right when you get some momentum, something
Mhm.
happens internally and everything falls apart, and then you have to start over, find new band members, all this kind of stuff. Um, so I learned really early on that it's all about persistence. It's all about consistency. It's always about showing up, like never expecting things to happen just because you think you're cool or you think your music's great. You have to just put in the grind. I mean, we would go on summer tours for 3 months long and play at colleges and military bases and festivals in 110-degree heat, 120-degree heat in Arizona, asphalt, blacktop, fans passing out, band members passing out on stage with dehydration, and it was just so brutal, but also just some of the most amazing times in my life. I got to play in Australia. I got to perform in Germany. I got to play at the Cavern Club in Liverpool with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones played. I got to go to these famous studios and hang out. It's like it's so much fun, but also you need to make a living, and that is the tough part.
Gotcha, 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 gotcha. It's dude, you're interesting, man. I'm like, I'm talking to you. I think I know you. We're going back and forth. Then, I'm looking. I'm like, oh my god, I knew a rock star, like for real one. You know what I mean? Like, and you so humbled and so cool. Like, and I'm like, man, all this time I could have been banging out, telling all my other friends, yo, I'm rolling with a rock star over here. You know what I mean? Like, I need that. So, but hey, just moving up just a little bit, because obviously, music is a passion of yours, and we can tell just from the grind that you put in. So, tell us a little bit about this non-profit, that you got going on.
Yeah, so I one of my big passions is like a kind of showing the newer generations like what's possible with music and with a music career, or just any type of scenario that you can be involved in music. So what Edumusication does is, before the pandemic, we would actually visit a lot of these high schools and junior highs, do a free show in the auditorium, or outside or something, in the football field or something, and then we would spend an hour or two with the music students in the band rooms, or in the choir class or whatever, wherever it was, and just chatting with them, talking about their aspirations and dreams. Sometimes we do little like impromptu jams. We do drum clinics. I'd show kids how to write a catchy song. We break out the guitars. We do a few like live acoustic stuff for the kids, and just like show them that it is possible if you start now. If you have a passion for it, don't freak out if it's hard, like just do it. And that's the same kind of crossover with Airbnb and doing any other type of entrepreneurship. Is like, yeah, it looks sexy and fun, and you're out on yachts. Oh, man, I see you, and like living this amazing lifestyle, but you you don't see the grind that goes in behind that, and you don't see all the failed attempts. You don't see all the people that gave up in the first year because it was too hard, but you succeeded because you went year 3, year 4, year 5. You broke that barrier, and so that's what Edumusication serves to do with young people and young talented musicians who maybe their parents think they need to get a job, as a doctor or a lawyer or something, but they really want to focus on music. And what we tell you, hey, if it's your passion, go for it, but you need to go for it. You need to prove to your parents that you have the aptitude for this, and you're not just like in it just because you want to look like Lady Gaga or something, like you not just for the fame and the lifestyle. It's got to be a balls to the walls type scenario.
Boom.
But I'm actually going in the
So
studio tomorrow. I'm going to be working on a new song. I've got 3 singles coming out this year,
Nice.
and one is called "Working on Me," which is all about kind of that whole internal, like, you know, hey, I'm staying off social media. I'm handling my own self. I'm working on myself, making myself better, improving my situation. That way, I can help others more efficiently.
I love that.
I like that, the concept of the song. I think what I'm hearing from your story is that there's a lot of trials and tribulations and failures that go along, but you've adapted and you've kind of made a lot of adjustments along the way, where a lot of people who fail, they're like, I'm going back to what's comfortable. I'm going to do something that's easy, or I can, steady. Um, so you definitely have this entrepreneur mindset, and, going from like, the small bus to the tour bus to the international to the, doing, nonprofit and like educating others. So how do you, somebody who's, let's say, a musician, or somebody who's an aspiring entrepreneur, like how do they know when to transition into something bigger or different? Like how have you kind of made those decisions to kind of take on more or do more? So maybe walk us through that a little bit.
Well, a lot of times, sometimes those decisions are forced on you, right? Like a COVID scenario or something, right? Where you're just like,
Yeah.
we
What
got
can
to
you do?
pivot. We got to do something. In
Yeah.
fact, I was joking around with my manager, my music manager, and like talking about this new album. I'm like, what if I called it Nimble AF? Like I was just joking. Like you got to be nimble. You got to be able to pivot.
Yes.
And like I feel
Yes.
like entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
especially, right? You have to be able to pivot. You got to be able to make
Yeah.
some moves quickly.
100%.
If you are stagnant, you die. You know,
Yes.
you got to keep swimming, right? You got to keep swimming against the curve,
Mhm.
against the current. And I know you guys know that, and I know a lot of your audience knows that too. And so it's kind of just that reinforcing of just like, you got to be able to pivot when the time is right, and you have to take risks. You have to take chances. Um, and instead of sitting at when you're at a place of complacency where you're like, oh, I think I've got it made, I'm doing all this cool stuff, there's still something in your brain that goes, okay, but I got to set myself up for the next thing. Um, and I think that's what really makes an entrepreneur. Um, that 1% of the entrepreneurs in the world that go on and keep elevating, right?
You're right about that. I mean, I don't
I mean, I
even
know
know
you guys did it.
I mean, listen, I think you made you mentioned a couple things about a lot of us, and we're guilty of it too, right? Of showing all the positives, of saying, I have this now, or I got, a little bit of money where I can take my family out to vacation, or we can go to these like we was in Maui, and we were able to sit there and just take advantage of some of the other things outside of the conference to do, right? And you see that, but no one sees, how even building this brand, right? Like Omid and I, we could be going back and forth. Lenny, you got to do this, and we got to sit here and work. I mean, we was talking about this like way, like I don't know, I mean, what was like 3 to 4 months before we went actually live with our first episode, like
Yeah.
sitting back, being disciplined to build chemistry. We sit here recording every single day, just me and him, just to sit there and say, how are we going to build this chemistry? Like no one sees that. Like everybody now sees the podcast and the guests that we have on and some of the movements we're doing now with the Find Your Freedom movement. So but John, kind of carrying on, to the short-term rental world, like what was the turnover of getting you into short-term rentals, and also adding on like pieces like the vacation cars and stuff like that. So can you just share a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, coming at it, when COVID hit, and I was just like, hey, we got to try something. This is the quickest and most efficient way of using what we have. Okay, we have this an office room. Let's convert it to a bedroom. Let's get some cash flow in here to pay the mortgage. Um, it's just one of those things of like, okay, you got to pivot and do something. Okay. Otherwise, what was the other options at that time? Like go drive for Amazon because they were still, like, there wasn't
They
a whole
blew
lot of
up, right?
options, right? And when I started doing it, and I started seeing the potential, like I had some horrible first renters. One of my first renters, like, was literally like a crack addict, like guy who had like 3 warrants out for his arrest. He brought in like a couple of homeless friends and a prostitute into my room, like the room that they were renting. And I had to get the cops involved, and I, had to lock them out. I had to sleep with a loaded gun under my pillow. Like, it was
Wow.
just,
Wow.
and that would have deterred me probably if I didn't need the money. But, like, you get through a few of those like crazy ones, and then you go, oh, well, 99% of the other guests are fine, right? It's only a few crazies. Can I like limit, can I like take precautions and put in like security cameras and keyless entry and um, vet
Mm.
them better, or have harsher fines if, they screw something up so they have something to lose, and so I kind of had to learn the hard way. But, luckily watching a lot of videos, Tony and Sarah, and some of your guys' videos, and Sean Rakiji, true, I was on his podcast as well, like um, having access to a lot of that information so that I could just at least learn from them and not make all the mistakes myself was just clutch. So shout out to Tony and Sarah. I know I met you guys at their first
Yep.
conference
Yep.
in Newport
Oh
a
yeah.
couple years ago. And it's so great to be talking with you guys now and developing this relationship out of,
Mm.
all of that. So, um, but, but when I saw the fruits of it and going, wow, okay, there's some money to be made here, and I actually enjoy doing it, I was
Mm.
like, I want to move to a market where I really enjoy. I was getting so sick of Phoenix. It was just so hot there all the time, guys. I mean, Phoenix, you want to avoid from like March till like October. You just don't go there, you know?
Wow.
And so I was like, I really want to be by the beach. I want to live in an awesome market with, you know, good climate and stuff. And if I can work anywhere, like I do edumacation virtually now here in my home studio. So, you know, I can work anywhere. Why do I have to be in Phoenix? And so when I moved into this home, I decided to rent out a couple rooms, kind of house hacking, arbitrage, and had those guests pay for the whole house basically. And when I saw that that was working well, I was like, okay, I'm going to start branching out. And so now I have 13 units or so, a 14th one down in Mexico, looking to
Awesome.
onboard some more. And it's a mix of kind of rental arbitrage, ownership, and co-hosting for other owners. And then adding in the cars, when I moved to San Diego, I just had this band van, this old Ford, you know, like Econoline, like falling apart with a trailer. So I had to sell that, and I was like, I can only afford at the time, you know, a crappy rental, used car, or I could buy a new car, like a luxury car, and put it on Turo. And I was like, well, Turo looks like the same as Airbnb for cars. So if I can do this on Airbnb, can I apply the same type of methodology and the same kind of hospitality to vehicles? And could I bundle them together? And at the time, it was a big unknown, but you have to take a risk. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to buy a cool Lexus and something I've always wanted, and a hybrid. I wanted something that was going to save on gas. And as soon as I put that Lexus up on the Turo platform, people started renting it out. And I started having to pay for Ubers all the time because my car was rented. So I'm like, wait, I got to get another car. So it's like kind of like, okay, I see the need, and I see the demand, and now it's like, okay, now I can up my game, and same with the houses. It's like, okay, I got 2 or 3 houses, they're all filled, I need more houses. So it turned into a problem of where in first it was a problem of scarcity, now it was a problem of, having enough of something that somebody wanted, and being able to scale it that way.
So I love that you were in a market and then you decided, hey, like I want to go somewhere that I would enjoy to live because I can work anywhere I want. And so you chose San Diego. So you answered my question because I was going to ask you, why San Diego, but you were able to answer that question. And so I guess, walk us through kind of like the scaling piece. So, at some point you have this experience and it's killing it. And you said like, um, how do you create the systems in place to then be able to take on more? Because I think a lot of questions occur around, hey, I'm doing well, and then I need like at some point you may or may not need some help, or you may have the systems in place to kind of make things a little bit more streamlined. So kind of walk us through that whole process as you've grown, because I think that question is always, do you ask for help at property 2, a property 8? Like, what does that look like?
I probably I should have asked for help at property 2. I didn't. I think it was up till about 7 or 8 units that I was cleaning them all myself.
Wow.
Whoa,
Like
Wow.
that's
like it
crazy.
was just brutal. Like one day I had to clean like 3 houses in once, and they're all single family homes. They're not like tiny little
I'm
condos
about
or
to ask
something.
that question. Like, what were they?
So like I was just like burning myself out, but I wanted to prove that I could do it myself first, and also to like learn all the ropes and intricacies, so
Ah,
then I could like, you know. So I was willing
relate.
to put in the grind. I think from, that whole kind of musician background of just like, you're loading in amps and gears up
Yeah.
3 flights of stairs, and you just do what you got to do, right? There's no other option at that point. You just do it. And it was up until then, until where I really started like researching cleaners and trying to get a cleaning team. And at first it was a cleaning company that I used for almost a year. And I realized that for the money that I was paying them, they weren't staying long enough at the houses. They weren't doing a good enough job. It was affecting the metrics. And I want to be a super host. I am a super host. I'm an all-star host on Turo. I want to have that high bar of excellence. So when the cleaning team started showing signs that they weren't doing a great job, I kind of threw them away and I got my own cleaning team in-house that now I pay hourly. They get paid more
Mm.
money. The cleaners, they get to stay longer at the property, have more hours, and they have more of a stake in making it beautiful as opposed to working for some other kind of company that doesn't care. But yeah, I started just first on Airbnb, got a few houses. Then I started going, okay, well, can I add Verbo in, right? Can I get that system going? Can I try TripAdvisor? Can I try Furnished Finder? And it was just like little by little tweaking and just getting, okay, am I going to now, Airbnb and Verbo, somebody booked and their calendars are not syncing and someone booked at the same time and now they're pissed at me. It's like, oh no,
I think we
okay, I
all
need a
been
channel
there, right?
manager, right?
Yep.
And and that's, you learn and you grow. I think part of entrepreneurship is really taking a lot of, hits to the chin when anything goes, and you learn from that and you know, keep growing.
So, two things I want to get into. One is this cleaning team, and then two, let's talk a little bit about that Mexico property. But
Mm.
first thing, everybody knows that having a cleaning team is the number one thing that you really need to lock down to be, especially if you want to hold that excellence, right? That super host status, because they're your boots on the ground. They're everything. And I ran through a ton of cleaners who just wasn't, great. And I never really thought about hiring my own, and so what does that actually look like? Because you sit there and how do you price out that model to sit there and pay people hourly, and then how does that relate to the fee that you are posting, online when guests, book?
Yeah, well, I started reaching out on Facebook Marketplace or checking out other local Facebook groups that were for short-term rentals and midterm rentals in the local area. And I think that's something that, your audience can do very quickly and easily too. In most cities, there's probably an Airbnb, Facebook group or something. And so cleaners are posting on there, people are asking for cleaners, people are recommending things. So that's a good way to get some vetted people. Also, if the cleaners are unhappy with their current situation, they might be willing to jump ship, especially if they're doing a good job, but they're not really being honored and paid accordingly to their work. Now, out in San Diego, it's kind of a expensive market anyways. The profit margins are less. I know a lot of my California boys, they're all got all their properties in the Smokies and Austin, Nashville and Dallas and places where, you can afford to pay cleaners a lot less just because of the cost of living and everything, just because of the economics of it. But out here, you can't survive off $15 an hour.
Mm.
That's impossible, not in California. So you want to, if you really want a stellar cleaning team, you got to pay them appropriately and you got to, be good to them. And, so I started implementing a process called Breezeway, an app called Breezeway, which are great
Yep.
guys. Um,
Yep.
and I think I met them at one of those conferences as well. I think maybe at Jesse's conference. And that's really helped have the cleaners have their calendar. They know what's going on. They can see the changes on their phone. They can report problems. They can kind of have control over some things, and they really like that. Um, I think part of it just comes to being, a good boss and a good conscientious person and saying, hey, I'm going to pay you this much for this, and that's what it's going to be, and not having any kind of I don't know, gray areas or, misconceptions out there.
Mm.
So, I like the way you've kind of explained everything as far as like how you like run your business and how you've kind of adapted, and it ties so like closely to kind of how your like music career has kind of like slowly like you've kind of built it up through all the skills. Now I want to see like how they kind of blend. So like, I know there's like a media component to doing. Music. So how have you been able to kind of transition some of those things into even like the real estate space? Because I've seen that you've done like a couple shows and you did the VH1 show, but then you've also done kind of like landlord diaries and so like let's say somebody who has no experience doing any of that stuff, like what's the whole process and how do you get involved? Because I think that's cool how you've had exposure in so many different
Yeah.
entrepreneur like type businesses.
Well, I think part of it is just like once you get to a level to where you're proficient in something and you have some knowledge and some expertise, and you're able to kind of talk about it succinctly, that really helps. Luckily, in the music world, I've been doing it for so long. I would speak at panels at South by Southwest or NAM or some of these other music
Mhm.
festivals and conferences, or we would give, talks at colleges about music, and high schools and stuff like that. Also, being thrown on a stage with a mic, you kind of learn how to you sink or swim real quick, right? So I think being up on stage, learning how to play to 1,000 people or 10 people, which is really different. I think you guys already know how it is going up on stage in front of a crowded room. Sometimes it's so much easier than going up on stage in front of just a handful of people, right? You start to get insecure.
Yep.
And so in music, I mean, we would play. We played to 4,000 people one night, and then the next day at some dingy bar, we're playing to like 10 people and the sound guy, and they're all drunk and they're not paying attention and they're just being idiots. And you're just like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey guys,
Yeah.
rock on Denver, you know,
Yeah.
hello London, like
Yeah.
um, you just have to get in that mindset of just like forcing yourself through it. Um, and I don't know. I think the most telling way is to just throw yourself into those situations, and a lot, sometimes you'll find out that you can sink, you can float, you know. But I definitely think social media is important. I myself personally have actually pulled back from social media, for just my personal own like mental clarity. I think I was trying to do too much on the road and kind of burnt myself out quite a bit, trying to perform, drive the tour bus, make the booking arrangements, do all the things,
It's a lot.
and also be posting 3 times a day on every single platform.
Yeah.
That can burn you out really, really quickly. So I think now what I do is kind of a less is more approach where when I do post something, the photos look good, they're professional. The videos are of something cool and fun. I'm not taking photos of every single thing that I'm eating
Yeah.
3 times a day. You
Yeah.
know, I don't really worry about hashtags as much or anything like that. It's more of a holistic approach as of like, here's what I'm doing. If people like it, they can follow along. If not, I'm not going to try to clickbait or try to really just
Mhm.
Right.
please like me.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
but I do think a lot of the things overlap between my music. Like I had a song called "Let's Ride," and I had a cute
Yeah.
little like anime video that I
Yeah, I
did
like
during
that one.
COVID.
I was
Thank you,
rocking
man.
out to that one.
Dude, such a fun song. And
Mm,
one of the things I did when we were in lockdown is we couldn't perform or anything. So I sent the song out to a bunch of like commercial companies and auto manufacturers, to use the song in a car commercial or something. And funny enough, like a year later, one of the like local regional Ford dealerships picked it up and used it for some of their
So
social
cool.
media campaigns. And I ended up buying one of their Ford Mavericks, one of those hybrid trucks that were super
yep.
awesome, for like 20 grand. And I put that on Turo. And I was making about a grand a month on that car until it got a recall. And I sold it back to the dealer for over the sticker price that I bought it
Right.
from them.
Yeah.
Um, and so there was like some cool tie-ins that way, of like, um, and then again, I sent out my song "Let's Ride" to a bunch of DJs. One of the DJs remixed it, turned it into like a like dance track, and
Yeah.
it went like it hit some charts on Europe, and it was like in the French dance
Wow.
clubs and German like
That's
discos and stuff.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so cool! Like have a different
Yeah.
use for my music,
That's
So I
awesome.
love it all. If you can blend and have some things overlaying. Same thing with hospitality. A lot
Mhm.
of things like being good to your fans, being good to your bandmates, um, knowing your craft. Like a lot of that kind of stuff just kind of like goes over to, the short-term rental and the midterm rental side as well. I'm kind of doing both at the time. Um, I think it kind of like a lot of those early lessons learned kind of go straight over to what you're doing now. So don't like this is what I tell people, like don't discount the stuff you learned,
Yep.
when you were in school or your first jobs. A lot of
Yep.
my like customer service jobs like that I had growing up, bagging groceries
Mhm.
at Safeway, um, you know, uh, working in a warehouse,
Mhm.
doing all these other things, working in customer service, all of those like directly translate over into being a good host on these platforms.
You're so true, and you're so right, because that was one of the big things that I struggled with was, hey, look, I managed, I was a vice president of operations, managed over 200 people, and I never thought that my skills at my job was transferable to anything else outside of my job for a very long time. So um your lifelong lessons that you learn can definitely help out in anything that you want to build, especially from an entrepreneurship. One of the things I do want to point out with you and with guests, listeners, I meant, is that meeting you and talking to you is a really good feeling. You're right. I'm about to get a little personal and mushy a little bit right now. I'm gonna crush on you a little bit, right? You
Love
know,
you, bro.
and 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 honestly, because like you got like this, you got something different than what a lot of other people have. Because you're not like this big flamboyant individual. You're not a loudmouth dude. And you're just a guy who just want to sit here and meet other people and be genuine with them, and I respect that. And I just want the listeners to know that, just in case they ever get an opportunity to meet you, I want them to go up to you and say, hey man, I listened to the Find Your Freedom podcast, and I heard your story, and I want them to, because you're going to show them so much love, right, and make them feel extremely comfortable within that settings. So I wanted to get that out. But one of the things that I do want to
Thank
talk
you.
about is what's going on with this Mexico property. So to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Well, like I was too scared. I was scared to like do get some like properties like too far away to where I couldn't
Mhm.
like personally kind of like remote management just seemed like, man, I was just a little a little too intimidated to do that without having a good team on the ground in whatever those areas would be. And so I ended up kind of staying local where I was and really like finding key areas here to do it. Um, but I was thinking, man, San Diego, we're so close to the border. All the prices here are super high, but you go 25 minutes south and you're in Tijuana, you're in a really big port city. Things are, it's just Tijuana is one of the biggest like, um, you know, entry points into the U.S. all over the U.S., right? And there's so much trade, there's so much action going on. The housing prices are a lot cheaper down there. You can get something just so much more amazing for your buck. And I thought, I bet you there's a need for people to have housing over there as well, especially if they don't have a U.S. passport or a visa. They can't get up to see their loved ones here. Where are they going to go? They're going to camp out in Tijuana, and their people are going to come there. And so I had this idea and I ran it by some people and I met some people on Facebook in one of those groups, and that they were like, oh yeah, I've got some properties in Mexico. They do really well. Here's how you do it. And here's some things to watch out for. And so I actually found this property that I have now on Facebook Marketplace, because there's no Zillow in Mexico, right? There's no Redfin. So, and this one was a property for rent. And so I actually rental arbitraged it as a test to see if I could really do it. And it's a gorgeous, large 4-bedroom, 2-story, ADA compliant house with wheelchair access, giant wheelchair shower. You could roll a wheelchair in there for people that need that. And I thought, wow, what a unique situation. It's a block away from the beach, and it's literally 40 minutes from where I'm sitting right here. So if something does happen, I can jet down there super quick, check it out, deal with it. I got my global entry pass, so I could get up through the line a lot quicker and not have to sit for a couple hours. So that was a big thing if I could do that. And it's been going great. People love the house. I've been getting rave reviews, all 5-star reviews. One thing about operating in a different country, especially a country that's a little bit, got more economic problems than the U.S., we forget how good we have it here sometimes. But whenever you travel outside, you realize there's a lot of great things about other countries, and there's a lot of great things about where we live now. And, a lot of times in Mexico, the power grid's not as stable. Electricity goes out more frequently. Water goes out more frequently. Things happen. And so that, again, you have to pivot. You have to be fast on your feet. You have to think quickly. You have to have a good team on the ground. And so luckily I found some great people down there, great cleaner, a great handyman who can react quickly if things happen, if the hot water heater's not working, or if the gas goes out, or if the power's off on the block. Do we have extra water for them that they can use? Do we have flashlights? Do we have a reserve water tank? Do we have extra batteries? Like all these things. Do we have candles? You just got to learn how to do it, and luckily people are really enjoying that property. Crazy thing that I did not anticipate is all of a sudden I start getting all these messages in Russian.
Okay.
So this is at the start of the year, January and February, going, hey, we need a place to stay. We're asylum seekers. We're at the border. I've got 3 families. We're all trying to get across, but our court dates, and we don't know how long we're going to stay. Can we rent out your place for 3 weeks and maybe extend or whatever? And so I'm using Google Translate, or Airbnb translates the messages sometimes. And they're like, yeah, we're Ukrainians. We had to flee. We're Russians. We are dissidents, like we had to get out of there. We're Azerbaijanians. We're like all these different Belarusians, like all these different guys. And they all speak Russian because it was all like former Soviet bloc. So everyone still kind of speaks a little bit of Russian. And they don't speak any Spanish. They don't speak any English. They're in this foreign country. They're just trying to get their families safe, And so it was so cool to be able to provide housing for them, give them like a monthly rate discount. They were great renters. They kept everything super, super clean. And then some of them, messaged me afterwards, like a few months later, like they got to their families in the U.S., in Ohio or Florida or wherever they were going, Wisconsin. They were safe. They were getting jobs. Their kids were in school. They were like, thank you so much. Like, we don't know what we were going to do. So that was just like unexpected, but I was able to provide something for people that really, really needed it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And catch them through. So you never know what's going to happen, man, in this business.
That's insane. I mean, wow, that's incredible, that the things that you come across, and you just never know, right? Especially, housing is universal. Everybody needs it. And like you said, you're in that transitional city. If you don't mind sharing, like, to rent a 4-bed, and then what are like a typical monthly gross? Like, how does that compare? And because I could see a lot of people saying, oh, like, I'm scared. I would be scared to like jump into a foreign country and attempt something like this. And but I think you have such resilience about you, and you're just kind of a problem solver that, if there's a proven way to do it, and looks like you just execute on the proven way of doing it.
Well, and part of it too is like kind of I'm a fan of building slowly instead
Mm,
of like, even though it looks like I grew fast,
Yeah.
and some opportunities do start falling in your laps once you have something proven. I mean, you guys know, like once people start seeing your portfolio, they start going, okay,
Yeah.
I need to do something with this dude. He's got something
Yeah.
going on. And it kind of like starts snowballing. So some units fell quicker than others in coming together. Um, but it's because it was that tedious building up until you reach that kind of momentum stage where things just start kind of like falling in your lap because you have this reputation. People trust you with their home and their property and their money. Um, and so building that trust and that kind of like, you know, I don't know, just kind of vibe up is really important, right? People and referrals, right? Like people are like, oh yeah, Lenny's literally the boss. You got to go talk to Lenny. Omid knows what the hell he's talking about. You got to talk to Omid, And so it's that building that level of trust where people trust to refer other people to you, and then they feel, um, and so you do have to kind of build that up slowly. But when it does come, and let's say your new property isn't getting off the ground as quickly as you thought it was, there's all these problems. It took me 6 months to get that Mexico property ready to go. There were so many, small problems at the house and just little things a lot of things that needed to be figured out. Um, that it was a slow period, and so you have to make sure your other properties are cash flowing enough to cover just in case
yep.
this investment isn't doing well, right? Um, and you have to make sure your other things are locked down before you start jumping into something new that might you don't know is an unknown. It's going to sink or swim, and to be able to cover those low months in February and stuff when things are not doing so hot just quite yet, and you're building
Totally.
your 5-star ratings and you're building your reviews and you're building that reputation. So I think that's a big key part of it is don't just jump in without having a little bit of a safety net. Sometimes you just have to jump. I mean, there's no choice. But if you can be a little strategic with it so that, if you are able to, you can pivot.
Absolutely.
I was lucky enough now, it took a long time, but now just like you guys know, once you have those systems in place where you can take a back seat a little bit and know that things are going to be running smoothly or as
Yeah,
smoothly as it can without your involvement.
that's correct.
I just took a trip to Malaysia and for a few weeks, and there was a few fires I had to put out at like 3-4 in the morning, and but other than that, like I was surprised, like my cell phone wasn't ringing as much as I thought it would be, and disasters weren't happening as
Yeah.
much as I thought. And I was like, okay, I can actually not look at my phone for a few hours, And man, that was such a great feeling.
You got to trust the process. Trust the process. Hey,
Yeah.
we have so much more to unpack, with you, and so you're definitely going to have to come back on because, we're just so much. You just like I just love talking to you, dude. It's just a good thing. But we do have a question. What does find your freedom mean to you?
Woo. Dude, it, by the way, when you guys told me about your podcast at the last meetup, I was like, dude, that is the sickest name for a podcast. It's just so perfect
Yeah.
because it's what we're all trying to do. And like, I don't know. Um, can you explain how you guys came up with that, first of all? Because I want to know, just because that's just the perfect, like,
That's a good question. I mean, you take a shot at it.
I'm trying to remember. Like I feel like it's
I
been
know
so
it's
long
my
ago.
it's my point of
do you have
view
a whole
first.
list?
Yeah.
Do you have a whole list
But
like band names
I
and you're just knocking
I,
out the ones that suck?
I know. Yeah. I think with Lenny and I, we both worked the W-2 jobs. We worked
Yeah.
the corporate jobs for a very long time. And I think what we were thinking was there's so many people that do the rat race, and there's so few people that actually pursue entrepreneurship or some sort of side business or a business. And a lot of times you do this traditional job or this traditional life, and then you don't really pursue what you really want to do.
Yep.
And so we just thought this is a great platform in order to interview people. And what's everybody looking to do? Finding their freedom, but that's defined so differently by so many different people. So
Mhm.
our goal was like, okay, like it's broad enough where then everybody has their own version, but it's also broad enough where it's like appeals to everybody. Like everybody inside, whether they act on it or not, wants to
Yep.
find their freedom.
Dude, yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
perfect, man. And like for me, it really spoke to me because that's kind of what I was trying to do. I was, you know, with music, I was finding my freedom through that self-expression. However, with the concert tour and you know, getting bogged down in the weeds of everything, I was feeling like I'd lost that freedom that I was looking to attain. And so it was like my own W-2 job, but not getting paid anything, you know. But I still, you know, I still love music. I love writing songs. I love recording. I love performing. Just the way that I was doing it, it was just, you know, I lost the joy for it. Now that you know, I've found my freedom with this entrepreneurship, I'm able to get back to music is now something more that I love again, you know, and it kind of brought that like joy back to it. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do. We may have loved our job, doesn't matter if it's a W-2 or a 1099 or a, you know, property management or whatever thing you're doing for money. If you're starting to hate it and you're like, man, you know, I'm just not finding the joy in it anymore, you know, and it's lowering your quality of life, you know, there's no big trade-off there, then you know you got to learn how to pivot. You got to find something else, and you got to find that freedom so that so that your family is also benefiting from that, you know, and they're benefiting from you not being in a bad mood because you hate your boss or because you're
Mm.
working too many
Mm.
hours. I mean, but at the same time, I like to balance that with like, hey, this can be a grind too. And if you don't watch yourself, you can find yourself being a chain to being a slave to, you know, your Airbnbs
Right.
and you know this whole thing. So you have to find a way to make it, you know, profitable and fun and exciting. And if you're not doing that, it's okay not to do that. Like I don't want to point people into a direction where they're actually going to hate something that they're doing. But at the same time, for me, if you enjoy doing what you're doing, you can gloss over the shitty parts, right? Like the crappy days don't mean a whole lot when you're sitting on a beach with your family in Maui sipping mai tais because of this empire you've built.
Right.
You know, like you can handle a few bad days. You know, you can handle a few, you know, fires that you have to put out when you have this quality of life for yourself and your family, and and they're benefiting from everything that you're doing
Yeah.
for their future as well. So yeah, I
Oh,
mean, yeah.
No,
yeah.
that's good. So, I know you're in San Diego. You might be in Mexico. You might be on tour somewhere. You might be in the studio. But if you're not in those areas, where can people find you?
So you can find me anywhere. There's almost too much information by Googling, so don't do that. Um, at Gabe Kubanda everywhere. Um, you know, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. Of course, you can find my music on Spotify, iTunes, all the
Mhm.
places, Apple, Android, whatever. I have new music coming out in about a month. I've got a new song called Working on Me coming out.
Boom.
And that's going to be a fun one. I'm actually going to the studio tomorrow to record an acoustic version of that song. So it'll be like
Awesome.
a little more laid back, kind of jazzy vibe. Um, and then I'm looking at some more properties and, you know, purchasing a fourplex, I think, in my future. So kind of going for that multifamily thing in the future
Cool.
as well. So if you guys are coming to San Diego, come rent out one of my houses, one of my cars. We'll do a bundle deal, give you a discount. You
There
can
we go.
find me at kubandaproperties.com. Gabe Kubanda for my personal. And I also consult as well. So if you're having trouble getting your Airbnb up and running, or if it's not performing well, give me a call. We'll go through it. We'll get you sorted out.
Fantastic,
Awesome.
fantastic, awesome. All right, so we coming to the end of the show, and what we like to do is this big boom session. So what we're going to do is I'm gonna count to three, 1, 2, 3, and we're gonna say boom as loud as we can. You fellas ready?
Right.
All right, let's do it. All right, listeners, you better watch out. 1,
Camera ready.
2, 3.
Boom!
Boom! Awesome, 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 awesome. Check this out, man. We just had another amazing show here at Find Your Freedom. And I'm going to tell you, he is one of the most genuine individuals you will ever meet. Learned a lot today just about him with the music career, and just his focus. And what I love about him is he's just real. He's just a person out here trying to make it just like you, just like me. So reach out to him, super genuine. If you ever see him in any type of settings, go up to him. He's going to show you so much love, and going to best put you in a place of ease if you're just a little nervous to being around hundreds and 200s and 300 of people. So with that being said, check my guy out. But now, one of the things we do need you to do is listen to this episode and provide us with a 5-star review. That's the way that we get more and more guests here on the platform, so we can just do one thing: provide you with some type of value to move you from A to B and get you all the way to Z. Until the next episode of Find Your Freedom, we talk to you soon. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.